Welcome to Two Brothers Talking. I'm Israel.
And I'm Eli.
This week, we're having our conversation with Gabriella Heinz again, continuing the conversation on relationships. Today, we're talking about setting boundaries. Gabby, what does that look like?
I want to talk about subjecting the person you are interested in to the counsel in your life. Because sometimes we need another pair of eyes that know us, that know our life, that know the dreams and the visions that we have to say, hey, Gabby, I really don't think this is a good fit for you. Or I do think this is a great fit for you. Sometimes having a trusted person that we can say, hey, can you look at this, examine my heart with me to sort out what this is and if it's good for me. We are so built up by the people that we have in our lives or so torn down by them. And so we need to set up good counsel that can be honest with us about the choices we're making in terms of choosing a partner.
Absolutely. And I would add to be open if it's not what you want to hear.
Yeah.
For us, it's our pastor. A lot of people, it's their mentor, maybe their father, their mother, a trusted family member, a trusted professor, whoever that person you put in your life that you go to for those accountability conversations, that bouncing off ideas, speaking into your life. If they come at you with a different answer than you wanted, you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
At the first time I asked my pastor if I could court Lily, he said no.
Yeah.
And it's not that he's like, oh, I control your life, but he's like, I don't think it's a good idea. You're not ready yet. And he says, come back in a year. That did a couple of things for me. One, that put me back because I wasn't expecting that answer. The second thing was it helped me evaluate, am I willing to put in the work for the long haul? And three, how am I going to react to this counsel that is contrary to what I really, 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 really want to do right now? And so whoever that person is in your life, whenever you bring them, bring the full story. Don't keep anything out. Don't try to shape it to where it gears it towards the answer you want to hear.
Yep.
Put all the chips on the table and say, what do you think? And that then enables them to have the authority to speak into your life, whatever the outcome might be.
Yep.
And I think that'd be a good test too, because a good test for me is if I don't want to tell that person, chances are I already know the answer. Someone's character can really easily be told or determined by how they handle being told no. Yeah. And whether or not, to your point, whether or not they're being willing to be put in the work is going to be determined by, whether or not they're willing to commit to that. And I think, especially with today's generation, we are microwave people. We want everything now. We don't want to have to invest long term. But if we want a marriage, that's exactly what that is. And if you can't invest in the long term to head towards it, chances are you're not ready to head into marriage. Yeah. Which I think is a really good test. So if I'm not even wanting to take it to those people, which I think you hit the nail on the head, we want to take that before whoever gives counsel to our lives, because we're looking at that through rose-colored glasses. Oh, they're so cute. Oh, he's so handsome. They're perfect. They don't do anything wrong. It's like, well, I mean, he smacks 15 people while he walks down the street.
He doesn't tip at the restaurant.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't hold the door open for you. She's always on her phone. She never pays attention. Like, what barriers that we may not see are others going to see? And to your point, we have to be open to that.
Yeah, I think this is a very hard conversation to have, especially with what culture is talking about right now. But again, we want to set up relationships that are counterculture because what culture is doing is not working. And it is okay to reject some of the ideas that are being put out. And the first thing is that sex doesn't need to be on the table for your relationships.
Huge.
I'm not going to tell you, I don't know what your convictions are, whoever's listening. I don't know how you feel about sex before marriage, sex after marriage. But I will say that regardless of how you feel about that, if you're trying to figure out if you're compatible with someone, you don't need to know if you're sexually compatible for it to work. If your issues in your relationship are your sexual compatibility, your issues are much bigger than that. I promise you that's not the issue. And on top of that, if you're still trying to figure out, you just started talking to this guy or this girl, and now you throw sex into the mix, that is going to cloud your judgment so much. So stop doing that. Stop getting involved physically with this person right away and then wondering why you can't decide if you should be with them. You're so torn up because your hormones are going crazy. You've introduced something that is severely escalating. Just how high stakes this is now, because you've given something that you're not giving to other people. This is something that's special. And so it's going to make it more complicated deciding if you should be with them because you've made it so physical. You learn a lot about a person in dating when you say, my body is not up for your use. We have a porn problem in culture. I'm just going to come out and say that we have such a big porn problem, and it is making people grow insatiable. Like their desires can never be met because they're always feeding their mind the next thing that it wants. And it makes it impossible to find a person because now you're dehumanizing people. And you are letting yourself consume anything and everything that you want. And a person is never going to measure up to that. None of that's real. None of that stuff that's on the camera is realistic. And you're going to hurt your partner by expecting them to be something that is made up by cameras and by a production crew. And it is just heartbreaking the way that it has devastated relationships, this porn problem. And I know everyone's like, oh, discover your sexual desires, whatever. And like, we have this sex happy culture right now, but it's not doing anything for us because it is making us lessen the value of people. And it turns people into sex objects. And it's so heartbreaking. And it so ruins our ability to see relationships with clarity.
I think a lot of things that people overlook are the fact that physical investment and emotional investment go hand in hand. Mm-hmm. So if I'm physically investing in someone, I'm going beyond, like I'm just holding hands. Like I'm kissing, I'm holding, I'm heading into a sexual relationship. My emotional investment follows right along with that. So as far as I'm investing physically, I am investing emotionally. And those ties are not something you just undo. Those ties are set, and breaking those ties causes emotional, physical pain. It's pieces of me I'm leaving behind the more physically invested I get with other people. So then when I finally find someone I want to spend the rest of my life with, I've lost those pieces. Those are not pieces I get back.
Yeah, no. And you just reminded me another thing that people always try to use for their defense is like, oh, well, I'm not that attached just because we slept together. You biologically cannot sleep with someone and not have that do something to your hormones, to your brain. And we know that. Like, that's not even up for debate. We know that it chemically changes the way that we process the world in that person. So to say that it's not doing anything to cloud your judgment is just wrong. You are not even acknowledging what we know to be fact. And I think it's really important that we just recognize this for what it is and say, listen, I don't need to get physical with this person right now. I'm still trying to figure out if I should even be with them. I noticed once I became a title holder, just how often I think men are not trained to know how to pursue women. And I don't always think that it's at fault of their own. I think a lot of people just haven't had it modeled to them appropriately. And I'm not saying this to bash men. I think I so appreciate the men in my life that have taught me what it looks like to be a man that leads with character and loves with character. But I think that there is something to be said about pursuing a woman and doing it with humility. And I want to talk about that because I think a lot of people listening could really benefit from hearing this, just as loving, constructive criticism. There's something so important about pursuing a woman and being okay with a no. There's something so valuable about still carrying humility, even when a woman says, I'm just not interested. And let me tell you, I have had so much more respect for a man that says, I think you're beautiful. I want to get to know you. I'm interested in a relationship with you. And I tell them, I'm sorry, I'm just not there. And they say, okay, I appreciate you letting me know. That goes so far with a woman. And guys listening, please hold on to that. Be grounded. Have respect for yourself. Have respect for them to let them walk away with a no. It's okay. It doesn't mean that you are less than. It doesn't mean that you're not good enough. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. Sometimes we're in the wrong place at the wrong time. Sometimes we think we know we need a relationship with someone and we don't actually. But pride comes before the fall. And it is okay to hold on to that humility and let them say no. I think that's so important. And in fact does make a man even more attractive when you are willing to accept rejection.
I think it starts in the home. Like men are boys. When, obviously when they're born, they're young boys, and they need to be taught. Whoever is in the home has that responsibility. For me, my dad started teaching me with my sisters. You're not going to talk to your sister like that. You're not going to react that way to your sister. You're not going to react like that way to your mother. When you ask them to give you something and then they say no, you're not going to throw a fit. When I was younger, you're going to say, okay. And when you shape that at a young age and you teach young boys and young men to see women as human beings, not objects, you'll never own a woman. That's not a thing. You don't have a right to go in and say, you know what, you owe me this or you owe me that. Or, I'm not going to leave you alone because you turned me down. I'm going to keep pestering you. Like that's not a healthy perspective or approach. And to your point, it goes a long way when someone gets a no and they react positively. You never know. That could change when they're in the right place later down the line. Something could happen. But I think if you're listening right now, you've got to raise your kids, boys and girls, to see the other person as a human being. And if you do that, if you teach them principles, we will have less people sliding into DMs and terrorizing women or men and sexualizing them, because that's where it goes. It ties into the porn issue. A lot of times we objectify people and we sexualize them. Therefore, that boundary, what we might not have said, that it disappears. And all of a sudden we're more comfortable saying things that we would probably not say if our mother was watching.
Yeah. And I think one of the big pieces there is if my whole objective of this conversation is to get in a sexual relationship with someone, I'm going at it from the wrong direction. Yeah. It shouldn't be, hey, I'd like to start a relationship because I see all these things you could do for me. If that's the point where we're at with that call or that conversation, we're approaching it from the wrong perspective. We talked about what love is. Yeah. Love is not what can I get from you. Love is, hey, you know what, and this is kind of the conversation that I feel that should happen. I've gotten to know you, and I like your character. I think you're attractive. I would like to pursue a relationship, preferably after speaking with some mentors and some people over your life to say, hey, am I actually even ready for this? Yeah. But not coming at it from the perspective of, I'd like a transaction. I give you food and stuff. You give me X, Y, Z. Yeah. Or I think you're attractive. I know nothing else about you. Let's start a romantic relationship. I think if you're starting it from the perspective, I want to get this out of the person, as opposed to, you know what, I care about this person and I want to invest in a relationship with them. Not just what can they give me, what can I do for them? Yeah. And I think that's something that we often don't consider. And I didn't consider until it was taught to me. It's not about, me going into a relationship to see what I can get out of them, because that person, and this is a big piece of, I think, of what drives people into marriage incorrectly. That person is not going to make me whole. Yeah. That person's not going to make everything better and everything go away and me have no problems now. If you think you're going to get into marriage and have no problems, you're going the wrong way, bucko. Like you're moving in the wrong direction. But it all starts from, like you said, I think it starts from the home. It starts from what they're taught. And a challenge to the adults that listen, and the young men who listen especially, I challenge you to educate yourself. Yeah. Now, don't just take what everyone says, especially the culture, the most mainstream things. Don't just take that and say, okay, that's gospel, I'm going to go with that for the rest of my life. Educate yourself on what it is to be a respectful man, and understand that that woman's purpose is not that woman's purpose in life has nothing to do with you. You're not, I often heard this growing up, like, you're not God's gift to women. And you're not God's gift to women.
Hilarious.
And women are not God's gift to men. Like, we are two separate people with two separate lives. And if you want to come together and join those two lives, it's a longer conversation and a longer investment than just, hey, let's go out to dinner.